Okay, so I'm making this video and saying, as usual, that we are spiritual, natural human beings. Our thinking, our thoughts, and feelings and emotions create or contribute when they are combined with other real spiritual human beings or people. When all these components are combined, like as a group, I suppose, then you have a resulting kind of reality, I would think. Look, this may vary from person to person because I cannot or probably refuse to grasp the full reality. So I'm openly sitting here and acknowledging that I probably refuse to accept the full true reality. And I say that because, like the previous videos where you are, or I am, perhaps I should just say myself rather than other people, because our degree of acceptance does vary from person to person, and that I'm very aware of. When we have the cognitive dissonance that we've talked about, operating at full throttle, shall we say, I think that's a movie too. Everything is a movie, everything is reflected back, everything is part of a human's reality. And I use the word human only to differentiate different people from those of the matrix or of the earth or of this artificial reality that, yes, I now realise, unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because it probably sounds strange to not want to acknowledge that you are part of or contribute to something as vast as a reality. But I've already said that I tend to shirk responsibility, and perhaps maybe that's why I have such a negative reality now, because not wanting to actually be responsible for anything except yourself, which tends to have been how I've been in my life in a way. That isn't to say that I haven't wanted to have been part of other people's life, but yes, I think I probably have been frightened of too much responsibility. Probably because you're aware that if you make a mistake or you are not capable, because if you realise, because to be perfectly honest, I have realised from a very young time that I was a limited human being. I didn't know that there was, that the human being was the centre of this reality, and that the human being is almost like everything in a funny kind of way. I had no idea of that. I just saw myself as a limited human being in comparison with, say, other human beings, because they were happy to accept responsibility. Perhaps they were not so fearful. not so conditioned with fear that if they made a mistake, it's the end of the world, or that they're better off without something if they can't handle it or cause it a problem. Whereas I was frightened of causing a problem, little realizing that in a matrix, if your human thought has an input into the reality, you are going to be causing problems anyway. In fact, better to take the responsibility and to be aware of it. I now realise when it is too late. That's because really you're doing that anyway. If you think you're like myself, sitting on the fence or a non-participator in this reality, that actually just suits the matrix and the matrix God entity and its minions, shall we say. Because most of the matrix are of the earth. The earth is an artificial world, only in the sense that it is, and of course I don't fully understand this, so I am talking through my hat, and I say this openly. I think that what I say is so, but I don't understand the workings of it, because in this reality we're deprived, I think, as human beings. You're contributing to a reality, but you are not aware of how you're doing it. You don't understand the mechanics of it. Is that the right word? And mechanics sounds wrong because that's like machine, but really, there is a machine element, a mechanical element, because it's a technological reality. You might say, well, it's a material reality, so yes, of course it is a technical reality, even though there are natural components to this earth, and the earth itself is a natural phenomenon. Is that the right word? In other words, a natural occurring thing. We assume. That's what we have always been led to believe. I'm not up on all this kind of reality in a way. I've never studied. I've always assumed that it was a natural world, as I've said before, and most, I assume, think the same. Or do they? Or am I in the dark and many others enlightened? I do not know. Or is everyone in the dark, but everything is still not natural? Goodness gracious, I'm confusing myself here. I really am. I'm trying to keep the thoughts, and then it will come in the words, because humans do that. Unfortunately, the matrix downloads all of that. The matrix can't do it itself. Me, in just making this video, is doing more for the matrix than for the few human beings that I like to think that I'm communicating with, which is what I realised a while back. And I've mentioned this in the videos, even though I'm not sure if I put it across clearly. And I've lost my train of thought as usual, because I try to get too, not so much too above what I think, but to try to put it in a way that makes me sound as though I fully understand what I'm saying, when clearly I don't. As I say, I don't understand the mechanics of the reality. Just as I don't understand how my TV works over there, but I use it. I know it's a technological, mechanical device. But, many now think, and I could not deny this, as much as I would like to, as much as I would like to. Because, as I've said many videos ago, even, we're like a fish out of water, or at least I'm like a fish out of water, and not all is like a fish out of water. But if you are, let's just say that forgetting even what is the real situation, because it is a bit beyond myself and I don't fully understand individual cases, shall we say. I can only really speak for myself. I can hardly even speak for anyone else at all. And that's true of you too, because you only really know yourself. And we didn't even know what we were, if you think about it, because, like I say, if you're a human being in this reality and you actually don't know that you're, that you have a lot more input into the reality, if you just think you're a natural human being plonked on a natural earth, and that everything just happened by accident, and that even your existence in this reality was merely an accident of two other human beings accidentally bringing you into existence, and that nature just has that nature itself even is just some miraculous accident. Well, even that is something that we don't dwell on enough. Because even if it was a natural world, many have kind of went on to that in a way, I suppose. I did hear this even when I was younger, like, do you really think everything is just one big accident? How could that be so? But, I suppose some could say, well, of course it could be so, and some could say, well, no, I don't think it is, but that's just a view. And I don't know what I'm talking about. So I've gone off onto something that is too vast for me. But, regardless of that, I've lost my train of thought here. I'm sorry about that. This reality, I try to think, this reality now does not appear random at all to someone like myself. In fact, rather the reverse. It what once appeared to be quite accidental or natural, or just circumstances, or almost like, I'm trying to be fancy here, almost like just natural things coming together to produce something else, or even circumstances just occurring, either with intent, but largely still not overall falling into place, shall we say. No overseeing force controlling the whole reality. And this is actually true in a way, I suppose, because human beings contribute with their thinking and their emotions and all this stuff to the reality. But they are not the controlling force of the reality. They don't control the whole reality. Whether they should or shouldn't is open to how you want to think about it. But also, we kind of assume that we do. Obviously, I know I don't control the reality, in the sense that you know that you as a human being are limited, and that you, like I say, shirk responsibility, so you pass it on to a higher power, shall we say. Or a kind of controlling human force, shall we say. Whether it be like just to keep the society. The society is like is like a set up, controlled, unified system where you allot power to so-called other human beings to act on your behalf or to take responsibility for you in a way. I'm putting that rather well, I thought. Because I don't feel that I can manage the whole of my suburb, shall I say. In fact, rather the reverse. Now it manages me because it's a controlling force around me, but I'm just being witty there. But that's because, the matrix has opened up and closed down and is exposing itself and becoming more intrusive into individual human beings' reality now at this time, for whatever reasons, it is, and many people can see this too, because regardless of how far you want to take the actual idea that it's a controlled artificial type of reality, even if you take it as a natural controlled human reality, as I've said, which I assumed, as I said before, right at the start of my very first videos, I still thought it was a natural world. I didn't particularly see everything as, technologically infiltrated. Look, I should have known better. I should have known better. I think that's a song. I should have known better, and I did know better, because I've mentioned before that when the Matrix closed down on me personally, and that will vary from person to person, I would imagine. When it did, I was immediately aware of technology. Immediately. Because I immediately noticed some technological control. I mentioned animals. And I'm on dangerous ground here when I mention animals, because a lot of people are sensitive on that issue. I myself am very sensitive on that issue. And before the Matrix opened up, I was more sensitive to animals than even human beings. I was pretty much down on myself and human beings. Now I know why, but also, or at least I understand why, because human beings are not, are not all what I thought. Also, I didn't realise that so many are connected to the earth or to the matrix, in the sense that I said originally that human beings, if it was a natural world, human beings would be correct in being attached to the natural earth. But instead they are under the illusion that they're attached to a natural earth, whereas they're really attached to an artificial technological domain that is controlled by an artificial, technological, godlike being. Did I put that correct or not? I don't know. If I don't, I'm sorry, and you can take me up on it. And I'm losing it here again already, unfortunately. Because so many thoughts are coming into my mind, like I'm wanting to talk about, I know that I'll forget things, because I meant to randomly mention or get back to a comment many videos ago, but when I start making the video I forget things. Yeah, because I don't write it down, that's right, but also I don't always know when I'm going to make a video. I've got nothing planned for this one. It's just me talking about things that are bothering me at this very moment, or that have been bothering me for a few days. But anyway, so it's a conversation with a few people. That's how I look at it, even though they're not in my physical domain. you know, and there is a reason for that too. There is a lot of, we have human beings that are basically scattered, from what I can gather, scattered around the matrix, shall we say, or over the matrix or in the matrix, but scattered by quite big distances. And because the matrix is aware of this, no doubt most human beings are like myself, where they're surrounded by a matrix and matrix people that may or may not be aware of this, but they are still operating for the matrix. And that's the situation because of the time we're in, I think. Because I don't see any connection much to, to so-called spiritual human beings. And really by spiritual human beings, I've said this before, I just mean real human beings. So you don't, whereas most people would think I'm talking and separating humans and saying, oh, some of this and some of that. Look, I'm saying that it's like there is a difference, but it's not about your beliefs even, although it could be a contributing factor. So it's not about how you see what you are, or what you see as, or what ideas you think are the true reality, or what you think should be the true reality. See, a lot of beliefs and things are really only what you think should be put into practice, or should be how this world should be. If you believe in if you have particular beliefs, or you worship particular entities or particular ideas, and you believe that those things are the original correct thing, if you know what I mean, then you are going to follow and worship and believe in that. You're going to, it's a bit of an ideology, I suppose, is it? I don't know, but it's also a reality, because you'll want to make it a reality. And that's right, this world is always changing, so you can make any reality. It's just a matter of what people think is how it's really meant to be. So obviously I don't think that this reality is how it is really meant to be. But on the other, hand, by that I mean because it is, I see it as very anti-life, anti-natural life. And, I use the word natural too, but really natural, when I use the word natural, I just really mean life. And even that I find hard to explain, because naturally, everything looks like life. So I don't know how to really explain that, except I think I have tried to explain it in simplifying it. Like if you really just simplify everything, and I think that's what some people do. Some, only a very few. And this is still a matter of what you think is so. What I say, someone else might not agree with that. They might say, that is, you have not really got the true reality, because that is not how things really started. That is not really, you're simplifying it. But your simplified version is not the true reality, because we do live in a complicated world and a complicated reality. That's exactly right. That's why I don't want that responsibility, because it does appear overwhelming and very complicated. And it actually is. But I because I can't deal with that, I simplify it. If I'm correct in simplifying it, then I'm on the right track. But if in simplifying it I'm just dismissing the reality, then I'm on the wrong track. But I feel I have to do that anyway. But I do think that sometimes underneath things, if you bring it back to what they call basics, and let's face it, they like to do that too. But you could still come back to an incorrect or a false basic. So you do have to, so how do you prove this or that? You don't. I cannot prove it. I only go on my own reality. so I can prove it to myself, as I've said before. If I see something myself and I back it up with my own reality, combined with other things, then for me it becomes true. I know that I feel very confident that I'm seeing at least some of the real reality. And I feel that in simplifying it, I'm on the right. I'm going back to what is still the real reality by simplifying. Because, the world is like that, even in your daily life. That's what the Matrix does to you every day. It's trying to complicate and sidetrack and bamboozle you. That's what it does to me every day, even if it is distracting you all the time. It's distracting you with its technology. It's distracting you with the material reality even. That would be okay if you had some input into it and it was only humans that were playing in this game. But you see, it's not only humans that are playing in this reality. That's the problem, or that's the complication of it. If it was just humans playing in this reality, I'm pretty convinced that I would not have so many problems, and that there would be not distractions, and that the reality would become a lot simpler, and that it would become more conducive to myself and other human beings. Naturally, if I'm a fish, and I've always said this as an example, that we're fish out of water, or fish that are meant to be in natural water but are in artificial water or in an artificial aquarium, okay, as opposed to swimming naturally in the sea. That just come to me. I thought that was actually quite good. It's okay to pat yourself on the back. We really have to as human beings, because if we don't, no one else will, let's be honest. And so even I'm going to, but I'm getting carried away with myself. Notice how then the Matrix takes over, and you're complimenting yourself, and that becomes like, that's like the ego of the Matrix. The Matrix is one big ego, really, if you want to look at it. It's one big intelligent mind, but it's largely intelligent by its it concentrates so much on the human being and utilizes the human being to such an extent that it is very intelligent that way. But I still say it's like it's like a lot of people in this reality. Like, I'm not focused on every person around me, but if people around me are focused on me, naturally they've got the upper hand, because it doesn't matter if you are, it doesn't matter if you have more to offer than them. You're living in that illusion that you're not aware of anything. You're not aware that that you are being used. You're not aware that your actions are the only important actions, that your thinking is the only important thinking. I'm not putting this well, but they're concentrating on you as the Matrix God and its Matrix concentrates on human beings, using their feeling and their emotion and their thinking and their way of I can't put this right. Without the human thinking, the reality would be much starker and much deader. Even though you might say, well, it don't look so very pretty in many ways, and that is true too. It holds onto the illusion of things still being pretty, shall we say, by the human thought, because otherwise you would see the reality in its stark deadness, or its stark anti-lifeness, I would say, because it really doesn't produce real original life, and it doesn't want to. And in fact, its whole purpose is to merely use real original life, drain it as it drains me and you every day, and then, get rid of it. That's what it kind of does. And it only allows us to keep playing in this artificial reality in a funny kind of way, because it likes that input, or it needs that input in some ways at this time. Otherwise, like I say, the reality would become stark and dead, and people would notice, I would imagine. And that is not what the Matrix wants, in a way, because the Matrix wants humans to keep playing in a false reality. So it has to be kept a little bit pretty, even though, like I say, I don't know how people are managing that at the present time. But you see, if you don't realise that most of it is dead, and you assume that there's a certain amount of pretty real life, shall we say, then you think there's still hope for the world and all this sort of earth sort of stuff that really is just a big fantasy, like my videos. Maybe more so. I don't know. It depends on whether you go along with this way of looking at it, or whether you think that it's the other way around, that there's only a little bit of negative anti-life and technology, and that it's fine, that we can control it and use it to our benefit, and that most is still natural and wonderful, and that we will save this wonderful natural earth that we appear to have. But anyway, like I say, we're fish out of water. So so as a fish, if I assume that I'm really in a fish tank, which is the real, closer to the real reality, as opposed to swimming in a vast ocean where everything is kind of natural. The whole thing is one big unnatural joke, let's be honest. I just realised that I don't even want to continue with this. I just couldn't help it. I just threw it away, because I'm using that example. But it's, I'm just saying that would be the ideal situation for a human. But, for whatever reason, we've ventured into a more artificial world, despite appearances, And this is only how I see it, or because I can't let go of the natural world idea any more than anyone else can. The only difference is that I hold on to that idea, or that premises, as the ideal situation, or the ideal state, or the ideal conditions for a human. And I know I'm missing out on some truth here. I know that I'm not grasping something still, and I have to say that because something just come through my mind then. I still don't, there's still a few missing pieces there. But either way, I still hang on to that idea, even though I don't think that it is the true reality. But even in us, a fish venturing into an artificial tank, for whatever reason, to come in and maybe try to inject some life into the artificial tank, or just to experience it, or to communicate with maybe some other fish that have also ventured into the artificial tank, and say, we want to make this artificial tank more confused with life so that we can survive, or make it more comfortable, or make it more how it should be. I've lost the track here. I'm totally out of touch here, I have to admit. Lost the whole plane of thinking. Now I'm getting into the video a bit, so I'm going to diverge now and forget all of that. At some point I might get back to it when my thinking is clearer. That's if it ever gets clearer. You know, it's meant to get clearer when you're in the matrix at this time, but the matrix will endeavour to fudge it out, to make it more blurry. And it's certainly, and even its people, those of the matrix, want you to be in fairyland. They want you to be in an artificial fairyland where you believe everything is as it's presented. They want you to, they don't want you to venture beyond their technological, material, mechanical reality. You know, see, I have no problem with the material reality. And I don't think I'm not sure that you're meant to have a problem with it. Maybe you are meant to have a problem. Maybe I'm just not I'm just not able to see enough. You know, maybe I'm still, you know, partially in the dark. But you know, I personally think that if you're in a particular area or a particular reality, oh, that's putting it fancy, but it just simply means whatever is around you, whatever environment you're in. Perhaps that's a more realistic way of putting it. Whatever environment you're in, whether it's you know, it's not even the material that is the problem. There's nothing wrong with the material or even the mechanical. It's just how you see it and how you operate with it. But personally, I would still have to say that, you know, I'm just going to say what I've said all along. Look, everything is okay provided it is under your control. But if something is mechanical and you don't really understand how it works, but it is in your environment, then you don't have any control over it. So you are playing in you're playing in a reality, or even just operating a machine that you don't really have control over. This is all I'm saying. And you know, that's like you know, dare I say that they've talked about self-driving cars. And I'll tell you the honest truth that this was a fantasy of mine when I was a child. You probably won't believe this, but it was actually a fantasy because when I was a child, this just come to me now, when I was a child, I used to think, wouldn't it be nice to have a car, a really big car, obviously, because I was going to live in this car. Ha ha ha, I actually can't manage even living in a house with every facility. I'm not sure. But see, when you're a child, you don't have as much fear. Whereas you get more and more fears, you need a lot more as you get older every year. The matrix makes you needy. Children are a lot, if you're a real child, you tend to be a lot freer and not as needy. You need very few things. And you feel secure too. You should feel secure. You usually feel, but anyway, I'm gone off the track here, But I used to imagine that it would be nice to have a self-driving car. I'm not sure why I thought that I shouldn't be able to drive it. That would just drive me around, because I thought then I could just go into the back part of it and do whatever I wanted. You know, this is actually a mistake, you see. Isn't it amazing how fantasies can become reality, because we now have self-driving cars. I know they're not greatly in use, but they have talked about them and they can make them. See, this is the problem though. See, as someone said to me not long ago, Even though they might have been in the Matrix, they still said, you better be careful what you wish for. And this is true of them and me, because I see it with other people, even though they say it to me. You know, Matrix ones can tell you something. They can give you words of wisdom. But like myself giving words of wisdom, we don't put it to ourselves. You really should only concentrate on yourself, what you think and what you're doing in your life, because that's the mistake we make. We center on others. We blame others for everything. We shouldn't really blame others. We should blame ourselves, and we should blame the Matrix, I guess, if we're going to a lot blame or shirk any responsibilities at all. And I've been accused of this, and there is truth to it, you know, because if you do create reality, and as a human being your thinking and your actions do affect others and this environment, of course that is true. We always knew this, we just didn't realise how far-reaching it was. That's all I could say. But even if it just affects another human being, I've shirked my responsibility, and I've been negative, and I have been in cooperation with the Matrix and the Matrix God entity by doing that. And I have done that in my life. Even if it's only a small incident, a one-on-one situation that has vast importance, but we don't realise that. We think, oh, well, look, okay, so I hurt one human being, but I haven't hurt the whole world. Well, look, it is a little bit of a domino effect. And even though I don't understand it, but just taking it back to my basic premise of that we are human beings, our thought creates reality with feelings and emotion, and that everything is a vibration, it's total vibrational frequency reality. Even though it's technological, the technology controls the frequency and vibration, which is the reality, but which is also us, because we are the because human beings are frequency and vibration, and then they create energy. And I don't know what I'm talking about, but you'll have to piece it all together. I kind of get the concept very vaguely in my little simple mind, and I have to keep it simple because I am simple, but I still get that kind of concept. But putting it into practice on a daily basis in a complicated technological matrix-controlled earth world reality, I've got that saying going now, haven't I? A complicated earth world reality that is controlled by a force that controls all of that, which is like your God entity. That's the only words and description I can use on it. And of course it is controlled by technology. The vibration and the frequency, which is a human being, which should just control itself and only affect other human beings or a natural earth reality. Because a human being is, this is my own ideal thing, okay? But a human being is a natural vibrational frequency energy being, whatever. And I don't know fully what I'm talking about when I said that, but it is essentially a frequency vibration influencer of the other natural life forces. Like if you had a natural earth filled with natural animals, then you would affect that, and that would probably affect you. But it would all be in harmony because it's all the same. But instead, I'm a human being in an artificial reality, in a technological reality. So I'm a fish out of water, or a fish in an artificial fish tank. I went back to that. Yeah. And so therefore I am not in harmony with the reality, but the reality is still being influenced and affected by a human being, or by me. So but I am being affected by technology is affecting my frequency and vibration because my environment is a technological environment all around me, a matrix. And this is why human beings are very suppressed and limited too in this reality. It's not just that we don't, that I assume that not all of us have been presented with this reality, because unless the matrix comes down and openly exposes itself as it did to me, probably in desperation, because I don't think the matrix likes to expose itself to real human beings. It likes to stay, as I've said before, covert and in hiding, because it can actually manipulate you and influence you much better in a way if it is not out in the open. Because once you're aware of being influenced, you might just decide to not be as strongly influenced by something. I'm not putting this right, I've lost it again. Look, I'm just going to go off the track here. I'm going to go back because I wanted to answer a question of someone that watches the videos or had been watching the videos. I don't know if they're still watching the videos. The cat ones might have said, hey, I might give that a miss for a while. You know, the animal thing, although I doubt it because they acknowledge that animals are possessed. They've obviously had possessed animals. But I just quickly say that, look, you know, I put videos out and I haven't normally done anything except me sitting here and the animal things and even just going to a different window to show the frequency, vibration, noise of the matrix, which is a big factor or has been a big factor in the matrix closing down on me over the last 3.5 years. I mentioned that before. It's been a big factor because clearly that brings a human frequency and vibration down to where then, you know, you have less input into making a conducive, comfortable reality for yourself. Even at a natural level, noise and negative environment around you. You know, like I've said before, if you're living on a construction site, or even like myself, although I do feel sometimes over the last 3 years that I've been living on a construction site, because if they're pulling houses down or always renovating and they're pulled up half the street, you know, for month after month, all this continual, you know, it's one thing after another. They're all different, but they're still sometimes noisier, sometimes less, but it's still all the negative frequency which is there. Even just the planes that used to go over, well, they still go over, as you know, but they were going over, and they were actually the least annoying. The actual planes going right over, the big jets going over they were actually going over at least every, I actually counted the seconds, and it was like about every 35 seconds a jet was going over at different times, you know. But that was actually the least intrusive or the least disruptive or the least negative or the least destructive to myself technological intrusion into my environment or into my physical and mental state, should we say. I don't know if I put that right. Well-being, physical and mental well-being, they use that in this, you know, that's a terminology that many people have used. Well, look, that physical and mental well-being, you know, has been brought down to a very low level over the last 3 years by just by negative sound frequencies alone, especially if you are sensitized to that. And it's the same with I was just going to say that it's the same with all of my reality now. Like once you start to see the matrix, or the matrix shows itself to you, in order to keep you in that reality, to suppress you, to keep you to where you feel uncomfortable, to where you feel, because, you know, if you don't feel trapped, you will be yourself. But if you feel trapped or surrounded by a negative artificial reality, or even if you just felt that you had people following you around, you know, yourself, I mean, even if it was a natural world, if you just have people that are watching you and following you around, just at that level, that would be enough to make most human beings feel very suppressed, very trapped, and very as though they can't really. You need to have a really big mindset to override that. I don't have that. I'm aware that I need to, and I do try, but I rarely get on top of it, and I have to say that. And you know, one thing leads to another then too, because if you feel that way, then how you normally lived and how you force yourself to live normally like you used to, but you don't feel normal, you don't feel comfortable. So although you might force yourself to go outside and you know, to do your regular things that you were doing before the matrix, you're not doing them with the same ease. You feel very uncomfortable. And then if you're aware of the matrix and its technology, fear sets in too. And that is a great asset to the matrix and its God entity and its minions, because fear then brings your frequency and your vibration, or your mood and your feelings, right down. You know, to where you, as a human being, are not, you know, you're not putting out any positive, you're not putting out anything that's positive. You're not feeling positive in yourself. You're feeling that the reality is overwhelming you. Whereas, you know, in a natural world, you would feel the opposite. You would feel that you were empowered by the environment. Nature would empower you. Nature would make you feel comfortable and stronger. You would feel at one with the earth, you know, instead of at odds with yourself and the earth, like I feel most of the time. You know, like I say, you do try to override it. This is getting very personal here, I know, but you do try to override it. So you pretend. You pretend that everything is okay. You pretend that in order to try to live comfortably. See, some people deal with this better than myself, and they are people who are, I don't like to say at a better level, but they are. You know, if you can override the reality, in other words, you can say, well, I see the negative technological environment, I see them, those are the matrix, I see that most around and what I thought was natural is really in sync with the matrix, shall we say, or supported or whatever, it doesn't matter. And they buy into the false scenarios of the matrix too, because it is a staged reality, as we know. It is just one big, a big, in other words, nothing is happening just accidental at all. And obviously we know that even if things happen accidentally, the matrix or the powers that be will deal with it accordingly. That would even be, even if you thought this world was natural, you know that it's based on societies and systems and things. So basically, you know, if something happens out of the blue that hasn't been planned, you still then have to have some sort of strategy and some sort of, you put going over my head here, to be honest, but you'll still be then acting. But the Matrix actually already, the only difference between events happening in the old world where you thought events happened and then you have to have a strategy or a set up idea put in place to deal with it. The only difference with this reality is that everything is set up before and after, that it's always being planned, because it's not as natural a reality as what we think. Now, you could even say that even in the real world, that the powers that be, or even people, like I could set up a scenario, couldn't I? Like even in your own personal life, you could set up situations. You might know what you're going to do. If you meet someone in a week's time, you might have a strategy or an idea of how you're going to deal with that person. If you like or dislike them, you might even be really sinister and might be plotting their downfall, because you might secretly dislike them. That's the same as the Matrix. So it's just that everything is on a technological and a bigger scale, if you know what I mean. It's human nature at its worst, put on a big, grand, artificial, technological stage scale. Did I put that correct or not? I'm not sure if I did. Probably not, but I'm putting it as best I can.